We'll talk about looking at the early Big Ten opponents, looking at the Big Ten opponents in general. What is your study involved in that regard?
What is my study involved?
What has your study involved in that regard?
We've looked at all our new opponents, trying to, get an idea what our emphasis needed to be in the spring, but you couldn't forget the out-of-conference opponents early on in the season either. Just more or less broke them down as if we were playing them next week, and looked at their run game, their pass game, the challenges we had, and we did that prior to putting our playbook together, just to make sure that we could account for everything we needed to account for.
Is there anything you see that makes you think you got to get out or away from anything you've done for the last 3 years?
No. I mean, there's carryover. The emphasis might be different in what you're getting a lot of, with certain opponents, and yet there's carryover into everything we do. There's nothing that we haven't seen. It's just that, like I said, different teams have different emphasis, and you try to tailor your work to what you're going to see most.
Is there anything, you don't want to speak in generalities, but is there major differences that you see in the Big Ten that you didn't see in the Big 12?
Well, I think you'll see more downhill running game, but you saw that in the Big 12, just maybe not as prevalent. You're still going to have to defend the quarterback stuff and the zone read, and you're still going to have to defend some pretty elaborate passing attacks. I would say that the physical nature of certain teams is there's more of that in the Big Ten than there was in the Big 12 in terms of the downhill game. But, with Oklahoma, with Colorado, you still saw it. You just didn't see it as often as you're going to see it in the Big Ten, I think.
Are the offensive lines in the Big Ten better than the ones in the Big 12?
No. I mean, how do you answer that by conference? You'd have to go player by player. We saw some fine offensive lines in the last couple years. You can't say that they're better. Now, there's some good offensive lines we're going to be going against, and a lot of it's hard. Some teams graduated some of their seniors, and you got to kind of project a little bit that who are going to be playing those positions. But different style doesn't necessarily mean better. It's how they execute it and what they do.
How you go about filling Haig's role, and do you look at a bunch of guys in that spot?
Yeah, I mean, we already have our ideas about guys who might fit in there. But the bottom line is you got to come up with your base first. Your 11 best, who you feel best with in each personnel grouping, and then from there you say, do you have a nickel outside of that group who could be really good at that peso nickel role, or do you have, like you did with Gomes and the dime, do you bring one of those guys down to play that position, and because you have good depth at safety or corner or wherever? And it's just kind of like putting a puzzle together. It'll probably be late in the spring before we figure out, exactly what that puzzle is going to look like in the end.
So you can't say, the peso kind of became your base defense. Can you say that will be the base defense now?
The peso wasn't our base defense. All the peso was a personnel package. That's it. So if you said Haig as a nickel or a linebacker as a buck are interchangeable. We just chose to play Eric because we didn't want to see one of our best defensive players come off the field. But our playbook doesn't change when we're in peso or when we're in base. It's just who's playing that position. Do you want a bigger, stouter, more run stopper who maybe doesn't give you quite the coverage freedom as Eric did, or do you want a nickel in there who gives you a lot more freedom coverage-wise, but you got to protect a little bit in run support? But in terms of what I would call, doesn't change. It's the same exact run fits. It's the same defense.
Carl, did you play Levante David at that spot?
if I lost my mind. I mean, yeah, I could, and he'd probably be really good at it. But then you're taking one of the best linebackers in the country and taking him out of a linebacker position. You'd be nuts to do that.
Carl, talk about Alfonso. How good could he be this year after last year?
Well, he's right over there, so I don't want to give him a big head or anything. But oh, did he leave? Good. No, we feel really good about him. I mean, he's had a great off season. He's seasoned. He really changes up his techniques. Really keeps receivers off balance. He's very physical. He's a great run support guy, and yet he's physical on the receivers as well. Very confident. I like his swagger. He's going to be a good, not only is he going to be a great player for us, but he's going to be huge in developing some of those younger corners who are very talented and yet aren't quite as seasoned. But they're going to have him to look to, and that's important. And you know, that to me gets me very excited about spring, because you got Fonzo and you got some safeties who are experienced. At the second level, you got Levante, you got Will, in many cases Fisher, and then you got Jared and Cameron. You got leadership in all three levels of your defense, and that's big. That's something we haven't always had here, and that gives you a great jumping off point.
David obviously exploded on the scene last year. What does he have to do to take his game to yet another level?
Just keep doing what he's doing. He's a student of the game. He's very analytical about it. I know he's been up watching a lot of film in the off season, you know, watching his successes, watching his mistakes, getting a different view of you know, of what, you know, how he could do things differently, how he could expand his vision. You know, this off season is going to be great for him, because his understanding of what we're doing will double between now and camp from what it was in the fall, you know, and really create an opportunity for him to make even more plays and play at an even greater speed.
Carl, this group has been with you now 3 years. Does this, you speak so highly of them, does this have the potential to be the best group you've had here?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, we're talented. We've got great leadership. I think we're fast and we're physical. It'll be interesting how it all comes together. But I'll never underestimate the importance of chemistry on a defense. And you just never know what the final product's going to be. I've seen very talented defenses who didn't achieve their potential. And I've seen defenses who, on paper, you would have said, not quite sure, and ended up being really stout, great defenses. So, you know, I think that leadership we have at all three levels I mentioned lends itself to good chemistry, and you know, we've got, I mean, we're limitless in terms of how good we could be, I think.
Coach, this will be your 4th year now as a coordinator. I mean, how much have you evolved in that role and grown? And you know, Bo has seemed to give you more and more responsibility each year. Continue to evolve. I think, you know, we made JP that will be the defensive line coach, and took that off my title. I'm excited about, you know, spending more time with the linebackers in the secondary, all three positions. You know, last year I was in all three meetings and oversaw the whole thing, but I still was down with the defensive line during individual, and I think, you know, while I'll visit there, I think I'm going to be, my involvement with all three positions will grow, and you know, as Bo's involvement on both sides of the football grows. So I'm excited about that, the expanded role, and I'm ready for it. So will you call the plays now this year? I mean, outright? Yeah, that's the agreement. We'll see. We'll see.
With now graduating and...
You know what, honestly, to answer that question, I don't think there's, especially last year and the year before, maybe not so much first year, I don't think there was a call made that there wasn't discussion between Bo and I, and you know, we've really grown comfortable with each other and learned to anticipate each other's thoughts, and you know, whether, you know, I'm signaling, I've always signaled it, whether it's coming out of his mouth or my mouth, it's coming after a great deal of discussion between us two. So, you know, who knows? But
With Allen graduating and Meredith out for the spring, who are you kind of looking to maybe a couple guys that are kind of poised to step up at defensive end?
You know, I see, Cameron, you never want to see a guy get hurt, but I think this gives us tremendous opportunity at that defensive end position because we've got some great talent there. I think Josh Williams, Jason Ankra, Kevin Thompson, Eric Martin, those are all guys who could and probably will be on the field for us at some point next year. Got some other guys, some younger, walk-on guys, some younger scholarship guys, and they're all going to be fighting for that second, third, even first group in some respects. And I think that position, as much as any other, will be interesting to me, how it plays out through the spring and who steps up and who wins the starting spots, coming out of spring. And then you throw Cameron back into the mix, who is a very versatile player. Could play inside, could play outside, played some stand-up for us, and I think it's just great for our depth. It reminds me a lot of that first spring when Sue was hurt, and we were able to really focus our teaching on some younger kids and allowed us to create depth at that position.
Time for one or two more.
What do you like about your new coaches, Els and Raymond?
Not much. Personally, nothing. Professionally, I think Corey is a great technician. I think he really works hard at that and studies that hard and speaks the language of our players very well. I think they're going to really thrive under his leadership. He came in here with an understanding of the scheme already, although obviously we've grown and we've changed a bit since he was involved with it at LSU, but still a basic understanding of the tenets of the defense, and so he's a quick study. Ross, I think Ross is a great teacher, as good a teacher as I've been around in this business, and I think our backers are really going to thrive under that, because I really think he's just going to give them a different perspective than, there's so many different ways to skin a cat, and two coaches with completely different methodologies could both be very effective as teachers, and I think he's going to come at it from a very different perspective than Eck did, which will only benefit players. It creates variety. It's for different learning styles. It's I'm excited about what he'll bring to that linebacker meeting room.
Hey, Carl, you've got a lot of redshirt freshmen like Chase Rome, Jay Guy, Walker Ashburn, Corey Cooper, Harvey Jackson. Any of these guys, players you look at not just establish depth, but vie for a starting spot?
Well, they better. I mean, that's why we recruited them and put them on scholarship. I hope all of them are fighting for starting spots. I mean, and that's what you want, because in the end, that does. I don't say we create depth by developing young kids as backups. You create depth by having your young kids fighting for starting spots, and everybody gets better, and then we become deeper. I honestly believe this could be our deepest group, at all three levels, and I think for sure in the secondary, obviously on the defensive line, and then you look at that second level, there's some younger guys who have to step up and start vying for spots and not relegating themselves a backup, and suddenly you've got an awfully deep defense, so.